I think this, as far as I'm concerned, this is probably, as far as I know, it's probably the first ever DMT symposium, which kind of suggests we invited our speakers for our specific symposium, which we chair. We've got two of those. Someone will be coming in quiet, and we opened it up to people to submit papers to present, and we received numerous papers on ayahuasca and 4 papers alone on DMT. So we had a special symposium on DMT. And DMT is, probably one of the most fascinating chemicals I think we have. It's an extraordinary substance, although we do talk about NMT as well. In that it's naturally occurring in the body. It's found in massive quantities in the cerebrospinal fluid. It's extremely psychedelic, as you may be aware, and there's good growing evidence that they may even be in the human pineal gland, which has interesting ramifications. Whatever, this is a naturally occurring psychedelic substance in many plants and animals, although not fungi, and particularly in humans. So I'm really delighted to have 4 speakers here who will talk to you about DMT. Our first speaker, without further ado, is Ned, say no more, and he's going to be speaking about NMT, a spatial hallucinogen with therapeutic applications. So please join me in welcoming Ned.
Well, this is interesting because I'm not talking about DMT, I'm talking about NMT, but now we all agree that DMT is psychedelic, to use your term, entheogenic, hallucinogenic. So NMT, which is very closely related, NMT stands for N-methyltryptamine. It's also known as monomethyltryptamine. It's essentially DMT minus one of the methyl groups. It is also an endogenous compound. It is also found in human blood, urine. DMT actually hasn't been found in the pineal gland yet, but it has been detected in urine, blood, cerebrospinal fluid, so there's a pretty good chance it's in the brain, though it's not entirely clear that it's a neurotransmitter. Some people would argue it's actually a hormone. Hormones convey much larger amounts of information in smaller packets. Neurotransmitters are more sort of transmitting the bits, if you like, at the synaptic level. So what is NMT and why we're going to talk about it? Well, I'll go back a little bit to the history of how I've been involved with it. I've been involved with acacia research in Australia, which some of you may know that acacias are loaded with DMT, or certainly some of them are. In 1969, the CSIRO, which is an Australian scientific organisation, discovered DMT in a number of acacias and published on this. They also found simultaneously occurring in 2 of these species, they found NMT. Now, this was not investigated for years and years. In the early 90s, a number of university students decided to extract these acacias and, to their delight, extracted incredibly psychedelic compounds. The interesting thing was that there was a fair amount of this thing called NMT also occurring with the DMT. Now, no one had bothered to really look at what NMT did. It had been dismissed in the literature as inactive, but this was purely through attempts at eating it with no monoamine oxidase inhibitor. In other words, with DMT, you could eat a gram of DMT on its own, it will do nothing. If you eat a gram of DMT with a monoamine oxidase inhibitor to inhibit the stomach enzymes, you will get a hell of an ayahuasca trip. So essentially, the only experiments that have been done with NMT were ingesting it without monoamine oxidase inhibitors. Nobody had attempted to smoke it or inject it. There was no information about it, which was kind of a mystery. What added to this was that people were beginning to describe these acacia extracts as different to simply DMT on its own. At that point in the early 90s, that was the era of Terence McKenna, there were small amounts of synthetic DMT around. There was very little plant-based DMT around, and there certainly wasn't as wide a use of ayahuasca as there is today. So the few people that had access to synthetic DMT, when they would compare the something that had apparently DMT and NMT together, people were finding that it was somehow stronger. People were using words like it's more physical, it lasts longer, it goes further, but no one could really pin it down. It was assumed it was the NMT. So it was decided at that point by a small group of university students, I was one of them, to attempt to separate the NMT from the DMT and see what it actually did. Because no amount of inquiry could find out much about what its actual effects were. Inactive is the general term used. So it was extracted, it was separated by a process called chromatography from the DMT, and a number of experiments were done using vaporization to see what it would do. So the first experiments that were done were with small amounts, which would be equivalent to, when I say small amounts, I say like in 30 to 40 milligrams. That's about how much you would smoke with DMT to get a full-blown experience. Now, at that level, NMT didn't seem to be doing very much, but it was doing enough to encourage further experimentation. So, as the dosage was increased to 60, 70 milligrams, something became apparent. Now, the first kinds of effects that were noted were immediately there's something very, I can only use the word tryptamine about it. Now, anyone who's familiar with DMT, sure, there are visuals, there are all sorts of things going on, but there's a very strong sense, and this sense of presence, a sense of, tryptamine is the only word I can use. The thing about NMT is the immediate effects resemble DMT, but there's no visuals. And this is at first a little disconcerting because it's very strong on a certain level. Say 70 to 90 milligrams, you definitely notice something is going on. What begins to happen at that point is an immediate receding from 4D space, is what I would call it. It meaning time and space. The central witness at that point becomes detached from the ordinary space around it. But there is no visual activity associated with this. So what essentially, as the dosage was increased, the main description that we were able to give on it was that it was a spatial hallucinogen. Now, to try and give you a sense of what I'm talking about with a spatial hallucinogen, maybe you could do the experiment of closing your eyes. Now, how are you aware of your surroundings? How do you know where you are in space? So, most of our cues actually for spatial awareness come from auditory cues initially. So, things, obviously my voice, things reflecting off walls, things like that. I should point out NMT also greatly increases auditory perception, and that could be what's partly involved in its spatial activity. But then I would suggest that beyond that, there is actually some sense of some kind of electrical field emanating from the self. Now, it's a good meditation technique, I guess, to do this, to think about, what are you physically and where do you end? As the dosage of NMT increases, the sense of the personal field becomes extended. In this way, it is extremely entheogenic. A large dose of NMT is essentially expanding the sense of personal space far, far beyond the ordinary field that we normally associate with ourselves. What is a hallucinogen? Is actually a good question, because I'm describing NMT as a spatial hallucinogen. So we are a very visually skewed society. When we talk about hallucinations, we expect to see things, but we have a lot of different kinds of perceptual mechanisms for understanding the environment around us. So to give you a further sense of how these mechanisms work, I'll relate an interesting story that an Australian Aboriginal elder told me once. He actually asked me a question. He said, how, if you were sitting in the bush or in the forest, sitting there, how would you be able to tell if there was something approaching at 2 or 3 kilometers. How would you be able to do that? Now, I thought about it for a long time and couldn't work it out. This is what he said to me. Now, this probably works better in somewhere like Australia or South America because you have a lot more insects. But basically what he said to me is, you sit and you start listening to all the insects, the frogs, the sound field that's around you. Now that will create, in the mind's eye, a matrix, if you like, a web. That they were trained essentially to be able to sit there and see this web in the mind's eye. Now, if somebody, an animal or a large person starts approaching, all sorts of crickets, frogs, whatever near them will stop. That will create a hole in this web. And in that sense, by you seeing using sound what is coming towards you at a distance. So NMT, in a sense, both increases, well, I should say firstly what it does auditorily. It's listening to music or listening to sound naturally is greatly enhanced, but there is absolutely no distortion, which is quite paradoxical. So it seems to increase the acuity of perception without distorting it. So this is still going back to what is a hallucinogen, because often, when people take DMT, the things people see are often things they can't relate to in their ordinary existence. So the term hallucinogen suggests that people are seeing things that aren't there. I would suggest that tryptamines actually increase our perception of things that are there, not necessarily in the same time, space, location. Perhaps they're eternal. But hallucinogen suggests that something is distorted, something is not real. And what NMT suggests is working in a very similar way to DMT, is that what it's actually doing is increasing the acuity of perception. So I'll give you a quick description of a subject vaporizing NMT. Just bear with me a moment. Any questions are welcome to, of course. Okay, this was a subject in the early 90s vaporizing 60 to 70 milligrams. So 0 to 2 minutes, he says, I feel incredibly trippy, but not a lot's happening. Very low level, not very active at this dosage. 2 to 3 minutes, he says, I'm feeling a wave of something coming on slowly. We're getting faster, but there's nothing to see visually. 3 minutes, he says, I have closed-eye visuals, like something descending into me, big, entity-like. So there are some visuals, but not many. It's very de-emphasized. 5 to 20 minutes, he says he has very occasional mild geometrics that change with music. The music seems more amazing than usual, but it's not warped out or anything, in his words. 20 to 50 minutes, he says, I've got a building feeling of being more and more out of it somehow. I'm getting rainbows and flashes off the candles. It's actually a very nice space. Now that I'm not expecting any kind of dissolvement, good for music and headspace. 50 to 70 minutes is diminishing, but I feel great. I feel really clear. I feel like going on a walk outside. So the other aspect of NMT is that it's very relaxing. It suits meditation. It's not bombarding one with a visual sensory overload, but it's definitely doing something to perception that's, in most subjects, yeah, they enjoy it. It appears to be pleasant. So, firstly, it seems to affect us in the sense of space, increase our awareness of our sense of personal space and extend it. It working with the auditory system, it further enhances the spatial detection. So this brings me back to the question of the visually skewed society. So most of the time, you know, in the entheogen world, people seem to be looking for visions. They're also looking for understanding, you know, empathogenic feelings, but I would suggest that visuals are actually quite limited in the amount of information that they can present. For instance, you know, once we're into a multi-dimensional concept, once we're overlaying dimensions like a hypercube, you know, how many levels of reality are enfolded into itself can we actually see? So to take it to the extreme, you can't see infinity. This is a little bit like, you know, I'm not suggesting that much that Carlos Castaneda said was necessarily based in actual reality. Actually, some people have suggested that Don Juan is actually Maria Sabina. But not going into that level, or into that discussion. At one point in the Carlos Castaneda books, he's told to forget about the visuals. The visuals are not actually that important. And I never really thought about that much until NMT. And then I began to think, well, NMT is allowing some kind of fusion with what feels like the very fabric of physical space. This is potentially more important because it's allowing connection with a greater whole. So you cannot see infinity, you cannot you cannot visually take in more than a certain amount of information. Perhaps in spatial mechanisms, we can actually take a lot more in. It's a completely different perceptual system. It then, on a high dose, it begins to allow one to spatially navigate. It's different sense of the DMT experience can be very much about having a visual screen, if you like, in front of one. NMT very much is about movement with the fabric of space itself. So, getting into the pharmacology of it, it's, as I said, it's been naturally detected in human urine, human blood. A lot of experimentation had been done with animals, but no one ability to see if it did anything psychoactive. It works as a potent antagonist of the 5-HT1 receptor. Now, to give you an idea of what that means, the more visually orientated hallucinogens, LSD, psilocybin, they operate primarily on the 5-H2. The 5-HT is 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is also known as serotonin. DMT also operates on the 5-HT2 receptor to an extent, but primarily operates on the 5-HT7 receptor. All these compounds also operate on multiple receptors throughout the body. So DMT, for instance, whatever it's doing inside the brain, once it gets in there, it has a lot of natural functions in the body. DMT is a inducer of smooth muscle tremor. Smooth muscle tremor helps you digest your food in your stomach. So tryptamines generally are involved in a wide range of physiological functions. They're essential, both neurological, they may not be essential neurologically, that's an interesting question, but they're there for physiological functions in the body. The really interesting thing about NMT as opposed to DMT is that some experiments were done that were published in the Journal of Medical Research in 2010, and they found that NMT was an inhibitor of something which is called histone methyltransferase G9. But the short story of that is if you can inhibit that enzyme, you inhibit the growth of cancer cells. So without trying to present some kind of sensationalist picture, I'm not suggesting it's any kind of cure for cancer, but it sort of shocked me upon reading this a few years ago that NMT, the spatial hallucinogen, for want of entheogen is probably a better word, has a direct effect on inhibiting the growth of cancer cells. Now, at this point in time, unlike DMT, unlike a lot of other compounds out there, as far as I know, only a handful of people have actually tried NMT on its own. It's it's been left there sitting on a shelf, if you like, by the psychedelic community for years, dismissed as inactive. Now that it's turned up in some of these plants with DMT is what actually brought it to attention. Interestingly, in combination with DMT, it extends the effects and slows the onset. So this, in a psychedelic landscape, this could be another potential use for it. A lot of people who have tried the combination of NMT and DMT, which is what these plants are doing themselves naturally, prefer this to DMT on its own. Why? Firstly, because the immediate sudden onset is slowed. It allows about 1 to 2 minutes for one to adjust to the space. Secondly, the effects are extended. So whereas the pure DMT flash is pretty much over in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes at most, NMT is still generating activity, synergizing, it appears, with DMT up to 90 minutes later. Let's see. Essentially, I mean, what does it look like? Essentially, it smells like DMT. Anyone that smells DMT kind of looks like DMT. It's very similar. There are just no visuals. Interestingly, in terms of sound, see, this was the other interesting thing about NMT was that people would report that they listen to music and they go, "It sounds incredible. I've never heard music sound anything like this. This is, but unlike other entheogens, there's no pitch distortion, there's no change, it apparently sounds the same, it's enhanced, so it's a bit paradoxical in that sense. There's a room in the Bell Laboratories in the States, an experimental room which is designed to have absolutely zero reflection. It has all these large sort of pyramid-like needles on the walls in every angle made of this absorbent material. So when you go in there are none of the usual cues that you have the space because there's absolutely no reflection. For the first 5 minutes, your breathing is just ridiculously loud. It's just, that's all you can hear. And you can hear heartbeat pounding ridiculously. You stay in there about 10 minutes, you hear the blood rushing through your veins. You stay in there about 15, 20 minutes, you start to hear the sound of your central nervous system. Then you go to another step. This is quite a few people have reported this. Then most people freak out and don't want to be in the room anymore. Because that's when I suggest you finally lose that normal sense of how you detect space around you, and then you are in whatever you want to call it, the void, hyperspace. You're just not seeing it, you're feeling it. So NMT, is a spatial entheogen. I think I'll leave it there. Any questions are welcome, but thank you. Well, thanks for bearing with that. I've just survived 3 hours of getting through London traffic, so it's good to finally be here.
That was really great. Thank you. We've got a few minutes for questions. Did you talk about chemical structure?
It's essentially, it's monomethyl tryptamine. DMT has, it's dimethyl, so you have 2 methyl groups attached to the tryptamine ring. This just simply has a single methyl group. It's pretty close, yeah.
What about other effects that are common with DMT? Like you said, there is no visuals, but what about emotions? What about entities, stuff like that?
That's a good question, actually. The emotional space, for want of a better word, is very similar. So the initially shocking thing about having it is that you feel, if you've had DMT before, it's suddenly like you're in a DMT-like emotive sense, but you can't see anything. And that is essentially, that can be disorientating at first. there are some slight visuals. It has a different timeline. There are some slight visuals at about 2 minutes at a high enough dose. Very entity-like, but again, any sense of, there are entities, but again, the sense is physical. In combination with DMT, people have much more a sense of being actually physically touched by the entities or physically being in the space. You know, you can, there's a blue wall with blue things. Add the NMT, you can hit the wall if you like. Physicalness, yeah. Well, this is what I think needs to be researched a lot more. Actually, I thought I think of the therapeutic potential. It seems to naturally put most people in a kind of a zazen, a very deep meditational space, because they're partly perhaps because they're not being wowed out by incoming visual stimuli. So it forces one to reflect both internally and externally, and because it breaks down the sense of where the self ends physically, I think that also suits meditation. It leaves most people feeling pretty relaxed afterwards, so it probably has potential antidepressant relaxation uses, and of course the cancer treatment is the particularly interesting one. But essentially I started putting out information about it to try and encourage research. I'm not a medical researcher, so generally I'm a psychologist and I work with Indigenous people, but I'm not in a position to be actually doing the biomed research. So I'm sort of calling out to the biomed world to have a look at it, because it's been ignored quite a while, but not apparently in cancer research, interestingly.
One last question, Danny.
It's two, but they're one's very short. Firstly, is there any indication that it's in Chakuna or anything similar? And secondly, about music, for musicians who are not actually listening to music all the time, is there any, do they talk about feeling more creative or playing music differently or anything like that?
Yes, it does have a capacity to enhance the creative process. In a sense, it would allow being able to, it would be quite difficult, a lot more difficult to work on music, for instance, under the full-blown effects of DMT. NMT could perhaps allow one to, physical manipulation of objects, maybe a bit more difficult, but it's not, it's allowing a deeper insight into what essentially appears unchanged, both auditorily and visually. So, yeah, it's quite paradoxical in that sense. What was the first? Is it in Chakuna? It's in the, it's found in a lot of the Yoko type snuffs. Yeah, the antimaterials are related to acacias, so and it's also in the Virola paste. And the effects of Yoko and Virola are quite different to just DMT on their own. Of course, some of those also have 5-methoxy DMT, but not all. So it's as far as I know, it's Chakuna generally is just 98% DMT, 2% beta carbolines. Yeah, it's a pretty straight DMT plant. Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much.